welcome to Book World: The Great Escape. It's Wednesday. I'm author CJ Peterson, and my co-host is author Michael Scott Clifton. And today we're going to be talking about the bane of every author's existence, writing blurbs and summaries. You take it from your nice Word document or manuscript to 250 word summary, then down to 75 words for Amazon, then down to 10-word headline, even down to the 280 character tweet. All of that is painful because as writers, we like to write. But before we get there, Mike, how was your weekend?
Hot one. We helped my daughter and son-in-law and my grandson. We helped them move into their new house.
Okay.
In Spring Hill, Texas. They moved from Cleburne. And of course, they had rented a storage facility, which was actually not half a mile from where their new house is located. But as anyone who's ever had to do this before, the challenge isn't the distance, it's getting the stuff packed and then unpacked and then loaded, then reloaded and moved to the new house, as I'm sure you are fixing to experience, if not already, CJ. So, and of course,
we have them marked with different things. So like H is heavy, A is apartment, H is house, S is storage, H is heavy, F is fragile, and I can't remember what else. Anyway, there's like letters on the boxes. Yep, that go with it. So like if we move into an apartment, as soon as we get there are certain boxes that will go to apartments, certain boxes that will go to storage. So if you go in with that mindset, it makes your life just a little bit easier, but it's still frustrating because you have to figure out, okay, what do I need to keep out? What can I unpack? And then you got to pack it all back up again to move into a house. So it's all frustrating.
Of course, it's really fun doing it in 100-degree heat.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like every time they've moved, and we were the same way back in the day, that it's always during the middle of summer, during the hottest time of the year. I guess that's a rule. You can't do it in the wintertime. You have to do it in the hot summer.
Well, most houses sell better in the summers.
Right.
So that's the thing. And so when we decided that, we do need to move for, kind of some medical reasons as part of it. We're like, okay, then we have to have it ready for sale by July or August. And so it should be right up now because she came and took the pictures yesterday. So it should be up for sale now. And so we've been busting our tail in this 100-degree heat, praying that it would stop. But it's been this hot since June. So there is no stopping it whatsoever.
Well, we're supposed to be, Melanie and I will be at the Oklahoma Comic Con in Tulsa, Oklahoma this Saturday and Sunday for the Oklahoma Comic Convention. And I looked at the weather there. It's going to be a balmy 102. I think the highs both days were there. Fortunately, we'll be inside. But it's looking forward to it. Have not been to the Oklahoma Comic Con before, but the company that does it, we try to get as many of their cons as we can because they do a great job. And I think the last con I was at, they said they had the highest pre-sale order of tickets for this particular con in all the years they've been doing these cons in various places. So hopefully I'll have a pretty big crowd there, and we're looking forward to it.
Well, I know you had a lot of fun at the last one, so here's Lord willing, you should have another good one. At this point, I just hit my breathing point because I have a book that's launching at the end of August, so I had to get that up to the editor who just sent it back to me today. I'm working with a group of teens, early 20s, late teens, in getting a book together. So I need to work on that schedule. And then I have school, which I'm taking a slight break from because of all the move stuff. And then I have another author launching a book in September. And I just had an author who launched one on the 25th of July. So we've got just a little bit going on, but then we get to work some of the Comic-Cons, which is the fun part for us. We'll be doing Anime Oklahoma. I believe that's the second weekend in September. Then the following weekend, we're going to be doing Brazoria Comic-Con in Lake Jackson. And then I know that there's Terror Fest, which is the first weekend in October in Houston. And then we have the Magic Making Mischief crew is going to be doing the Purgatory Scream Park the next week, 14th, which should be fun. And then the 21st, that weekend, is Gulf Coast Comic Con. So we've got a lot going on, per usual for us. It happens. However, when we're talking about Blurbs, like I said, I have a book that's launching in the end of August, and I'm pretty sure you have one launching in the fall too.
It'll be the end of August as well.
Mm-hmm.
New standalone novel, and so yeah, I am tongue in cheek looking forward to writing the summary back cover and tagline and blurb for it.
Well, let's first describe what each of these are. Usually mine comes to me as I'm writing the story. It's like I leave it blank, and then I tend to pick a verse that goes with that particular book because I'm a Christian fiction author. But the actual blurb itself usually comes to me as I'm writing it because I'm a pantser, so it kind of takes a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it does come to me as I'm writing it. And then what we're talking about with the 75 words is traditionally Ingram wants a 75-word short description. That's also usually the description that you would use on Amazon. So you have to not get your manuscript from 250 words, which is your summary in the back, down to 75 words, which is tricky. And then to top all of that off, you usually need some sort of like you called it, a tagline or a headline type thing. And it's usually 10, maybe 15 words max, but 15 words is pushing. It's usually average about 10. So you got to get that down to, the headline, the punch. What's the main gist? For example, I don't know how many words that is. Oh, I think I got 10. What happens when a fire marshal falls in love with an arsonist? That's Tested by Fire. That's coming out the end of August. So yeah, you got to kind of boil it down to as low as you possibly can. And then the 280 characters is a tweet, which will include hashtags and the link and everything else. So it's your own handle as well. So you got to fit all of that in, which is where the headline tends to come into play. You can usually use it for your tweets. So it's not easy. We hates it, as I put on the thing. We have to write our blurbs, but we hates it. So Mike, what is your view on it?
Well, I mean, it's I do hate it, but it's necessary when a reader is looking for a book. The first thing that they see is the book cover.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you always want a book cover that's eye-catching, because a book cover captures their attention. If you get a reader to the point where they see your book cover and it stops them, the next thing they'll do is they'll turn to the back of the book. Mm-hmm. Well, they'll examine the book cover. And if you have a tagline on the front, underneath usually the title of the book, that might pique their interest a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And then they'll turn to the back of the book and they'll look at the summary, the back cover summary. So if that captures their attention, then the next thing they do is they may open the book and maybe look at a page or two. And by that point, if you've got the reader's attention to that point, it's a pretty good chance, you'll make a sale and they'll buy the book. Mm-hmm. So summaries and taglines and blurbs, if you do advertising on Amazon, if you do Amazon ads, I think there are 150 characters for the Amazon ad. So, and I'm a pantser like you, CJ. Unfortunately, when I'm writing and I have a book that will be hopefully ready to go by the end of August, I pretty much focus completely on getting the book written. I'm not, I'm kind of the steady and slow. I'm not the jackrabbit kind of writer. I know you can write, you can put out a pretty good volume of words and a good product. But I work at more of the turtle instead of the hare pace. So then that takes a lot of my attention. But when we get to the end of the book, I start to think about the tagline and the summary in the back. And I will say one of the things I have learned with Amazon ads, okay, which is applicable, I think, to your taglines and your summaries, your brief summaries, like you said, the 250 word or less, and that is when you have only a very finite number of words to use, attempting to describe your book within that very limited number of words is doomed for failure. Okay, it's just not going to happen. And instead, what you're doing is you're trying to take the elements of your book and put them front and center for the reader to see. For example, in one of my books, I think I have magical world, magical adventure, magical problems, something like that. That's not an exact quote, but it's 3 brief sentences: magical world, magical adventure, magical problems. And that doesn't really, what does it tell you? It tells you that it's a magical world. There's adventure, there's problem, but you're not really describing the what's in the book itself in terms of specifics. And that's where I don't know about you, CJ, but that's where I always trip myself up, because I don't know, it's just not within me to not put something in there about a brief description of the book, but that just doesn't fit a lot of times in with these small amounts of words.
Well, I know that one, like my strength from within one is, what would you do if your town were held hostage? Would you fight back or would you comply? That's enough, because that's the basis of the book. I'm trying to remember the one for chain reaction is, pull that one up. The one for chain reaction is another good one. That's a one-liner, and it's and changing the family's past to save their future generations will Tripp and Tori cease to exist. And then, like I said, tested by fire, what happens when a fire marshal falls in love with an arsonist before he finds out she's the arsonist? Those are like the basis, I just made a word, of a book. But that's like the basic premise, and that's what you need to touch. I mean, you're going to expand it 20,000 different directions, but you got to boil it down to the basic premise of the book, the one question about the book. And when you can take it down to that, as in, that's like the what if question that inspired the whole book.
Right.
Then that helps the reader to kind of go, oh, that's kind of a good question. What would happen in that? And then that starts to pique their interest.
Right.
You said, you're right. The cover starts it, but that tagline or headline is the next thing. And then the summaries on the back.
If you can get them to get to the summary, you're halfway. You're over halfway there to, to selling your book, to make, getting another reader. I had another, in thinking about this week's topic, there's also, you have a different set, if you want to call it problems, but different set of summary and taglines if you are writing a series. So if you start with book 1, book 2, book 3, I've got a 4-book series. I know you've got several series, CJ, of what is one of them, 6 books so far?
5, yeah.
5.
Well, one's like the Team Angel series spans multiple series. So there's 2 standalones, there's a series, there's a trilogy, there's a series of 4 and a series of 5. So that's all 13. So
the Conquest of the Veil series that I wrote has 4 books in it. And you can't, again, what you're doing is you're trying to summarize on the back. I'm referring to the back cover, the summary on the back. Okay, um, you can't. You have a different set of, if you want to call them problems or challenges, I should say, because book one, the back cover summary is going to be fairly easy compared to the books that follow, because each subsequent book you've covered a lot of ground to get to the next book, and so you're left with the issue of, okay, what do I say now about this book? Do I just assume the reader has read the first book? Do I need to put a little bit about the first book in the second book? And I came to the conclusion that if you're writing a series, you have to assume that the reader has read the first book, and you really don't need to spend a whole lot of time trying to connect the two through a back cover summary. But it does make it a little bit more challenging. And the taglines, I've also found with summary books, they're I think they're just as easy with standalones, because if you want to call them easy, they're not as hard as the summaries, because you can reference the tagline to be directly to have it directly part of the book itself. For a third book in the Conquest of Vale series, for example, the title of the book is A Witch's Brew, and the tagline at the top is "Every potion has its price," and that's part of the book. But the tagline, the taglines for each of the books I found are much easier than the back cover summaries, even though they're part of this series. I find the challenge of back cover summaries for series books a little bit harder than they would be for standalone books. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, and you have to be careful with those, because, like, for example, with the Grocery Stored series, there are certain spoilers that if they read the back of book 5 before they've read book 2 or 3, they've got a spoiler. So when some people kind of highlight a certain book, and if they've got the summaries messed up or out of order, you've got a spoiler up there. And I've had to tell people before, I'm like, you can't do that. You have to put that down below. You have to have it in order. Otherwise, you're telling something that's going to be happening that is an actual spoiler. So you have to be very careful with those. And I've learned to be a little bit more generic when it comes to summaries in the back of the book because of that situation. There was a rather large spoiler that came out, but I couldn't not put it in the summary of book 5. I had to, because it had to be somewhat put in there. And so it was difficult, but yeah, you try to be a little bit more generic when it comes to the summaries, because in case someone does pick up the one and reads, the back of book 5 before starting the series, well, golly gee, now you know the big twist. So enjoy. Yeah, and I did withhold one question, because I try to answer all questions within the series. There was one question not answered in both the Holy Flame trilogy and the Grace Restored series. It was answered in the Divine Legacy series. And so it's like that one question was enough to keep everybody hanging on. It's like you want to put enough in there that they're still wanting for more. But you got to be careful how much you put on that back cover.
It has to be a balance. And this, again, it's difficult. At least it is for me. When you're describing, so as we went through the steps, okay, a reader sees your book cover, likes the book cover, catches their eye, the tagline at the top, that piques their interest. They turn the book around, they look at the back cover summary, or if it's an ebook on Amazon, they'll look at the summary description on Amazon. And the back cover summary, whether it be the one on Amazon or on a paperback, you have to have a balance between not giving the store away, not giving all the main points, because you want them to read the book. Obviously, you don't want to tell them what the book's all about in 2 paragraphs, and because that pretty much ruins it. in terms of, well, I already know what it's, so I don't need to read anymore. But you do have to have something about your book that highlights the main elements and characters that will be in your book. And it is a fine balance between giving just enough information to pique a reader's interest without the spoilers that you were referring to, CJ, which kind of either runs it for that book, or if it's in a series, runs it for the, or gives too much away on what's happened before if they have not bought any of the previous books in the series. So
now,
that's hard.
Yeah, and there's something we haven't quite touched on yet. Doing all of that helps you to figure out what's known as the elevator pitch.
Mm-hmm.
The elevator pitch is how it's described is basically you're in an elevator with a producer. You literally have from the point that you get in the elevator to the point that you get off to pitch him your book. So you have to be able to shrink that down to that. If you're talking too much and not giving the meat, you're giving too many extraneous, then you've lost them. You have to be able to catch the interest of that publisher, or of the publisher, or of the producer, or whoever, before they get off that elevator. So it's even more critical. So if you've already done the summary, you can kind of think through your summary and get a basic idea of, okay, this is what I know I need to do. So for example, the Team Angel series, I tell people that what that is where the physical realm or the spiritual realm crosses into the physical. So where there's dark, there's light, there's angels, there's demons. In this world, Michael the Archangel gets his assignments from God and sends people called angels out in the world to help people. That's an elevator pitch. That's all you got. So if you can, and I just gave you a whole series. So if you can do that, you're going to need to boil that down. You're going to need to learn how to boil it down. It's enough to catch the hook.
Right.
You have to be able to do it. But if you haven't already taken it down from the summary to the 75 words, down to even just the headline, because you may only have one floor where, for example, the Tested by Fire, I would do that one line of what happens when a fire marshal falls in love with an arsonist before he finds out she's the arsonist. One line. That's the book. That's all I got. One floor. Boom. He's gone. Did I catch him or did I lose him?
I found at book shows, book events that I attend, and I know that you as well, CJ, that you have quite a lot of opportunities to practice your elevator pitch. Because if you have a your booth out and your book's on display, and folks come by and say, "What's your book about?" and you give them the elevator pitch, and sometimes I have learned that sometimes they want a little more than that, and
that's fine.
That it is.
You just got to get that. You got to get them to like the elevator pitch first. You
obviously have to start with that. And if their eyes become glazed after you've rambled on for 2 or 3 minutes, you know that you have,
too long.
I've ever done that myself, but
yeah,
I wasn't too good at that when I first started this 6, 7, 8 years ago. So what is the old saying? The lessons learned best are the ones learned the hardest. So I've had a lot of hard lessons hammered into me.
Or like if somebody's covering the event and you literally have about 30 seconds to tell people who you are, what you do, and pick a book and tell me about it, you have to know it like that.
And the elevator pitch is key, whether you're pitching it to an agent, a publisher, or to a potential book buyer at a book event. You have to be able to frame it.
Or a producer who may want to turn it into a movie. Hint, hint. Feel free to call me. There's always that. You never know who you're going to run into.
No.
You never know who may know somebody else.
And as painful as it is, and it is painful for me, and I think it is for most authors as well, the back cover summary, the elevator pitch, your 150 character description of your book, they're all going to be just as important as the book you've written in terms of how of selling it. And we have to be able to get that down and get it right. And I have also found if you have a critique group, or in your case, if you've got a husband and an editor and things like that, you can run by if you've got someone like other fellow authors, people who have read your work. You can run by them your pitches. Here's the 30-second elevator pitch. Here's what I've got for a summary. Here's what I've got for a tagline, and they can give you some feedback. Beta readers, if you've got a loyal follower of beta readers, this can provide that to you as well. In fact, those are probably better because readers those are the people that you're trying to sell this stuff to. So you're not on an island. You've got resources that you can run these elevator pitches, brief summaries, descriptions by. And if you're fortunate enough to have folks like that, then you need to use them because they will help you. I've found they've helped me out a lot. In fact, we had a guest on here, Stone Key. I think we've had him on, and he's written the Des Arbiter series and Modern Warlock, and he is very, very, very good at blurbs and taglines. And if you got someone like that, man, you need to use them.
Well, and as you said before, the taglines are much needed for ads, just ads in general.
Right.
So you have to boil that down. Sometimes you can put on the cover. If you don't want to put on the cover, you put it on the ad with the cover of the book, and you get it out there so that they associate it with your book. But you're right. Sometimes talking to some of the readers that like to stay in contact you, which from an author's perspective is amazing. If you have a story idea, just say, hey, what would you think of a story idea like this? They'll tell you they'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Then okay, no, not doing that one. Or, wow, that's a great idea. Okay, great. Okay, I'll run with that one. So doing that starts it and kind of starts everything going in some of the processes. Paul says, what I find useful is saying how my books are different, as in different is better than better. So it takes time, and it takes time to sharpen that skill just as much as it takes time to sharpen the writing, like we talked about last week. To write or not to rewrite, that is the question. I challenge you to rewrite that book that you have hidden in the back of your desk, because by now you are a much better author and will produce a much better quality book. It's the same thing when it comes to blurbs. Practice makes perfect. There's a reason they say that. You have to be able to catch them, and you have to be able to pique their interest. And that's super important in doing that within those. So next week, we're running out of time, but next week we're going to be having Beam Weeks and
Stephen
Geese from Fresh Ink Group, and they're going to be talking about publishing. So super excited about that. So in the meantime, make sure to check out books and stuff of your favorite authors. Make sure to let them know how much you appreciate them. Writing a review costs absolutely nothing. Mike, is there anything you'd like to add before we go?
Nope. Just, got a new book coming out at the end of the month, just like you. The title of it is Pringle Prawn. I guess we can talk about it a little bit more. Very excited to finally get it finished.
Yeah, I know. Mine's going to be tested by fire, and mine is literally where the fire marshal falls in love with the arsonist before he realizes she's the arsonist.
Good elevator pitch. Good description.
We'll find out. But in the meantime, I'll catch you guys next week with the gentleman from Fresh Ink Group. We're talking about their publishing company, and we will see you then. Same time, same place. Bye.
Bye-bye.